just needs to be taken off the streets as soon as possible. Chapter 10. He sat in the basement, going over his notes from yesterday, a beer on the side table. Following Elise Adams home last night took him through town for several miles, then 3 miles of country roads before ending in a rural subdivision. He needed to avoid cameras and traffic if he was going to be successful. The best place to take her out would be after she turned left on Country Air Road. There was nothing but darkness on that 2-mile stretch. He remembered seeing the sign for Glacier Hills County Park about a mile down that quiet road, void of houses. It would work out perfectly. Elise had a yoga class until 9, and he would be waiting for her afterward. The fun would happen on her drive home. "It looks like we're going to get to know each other up close and personal tonight, Elise. I'm looking forward to it." He chuckled, went upstairs, and clicked off the basement light, then made himself dinner. He had 3 hours to kill before showtime. Later, as he drove to North Bend, he decided to watch for her from the Country Inn parking lot several blocks from the yoga studio. She had to pass the hotel to go home, and he knew the strip mall had camera surveillance. Her white Malibu would be easy to see even at night. The city streetlights continued on for a mile beyond the hotel before rural darkness took over. The hotel had cameras too, but he'd already decided where to park. The cameras faced the main parking lot and hotel lobby. He'd park along the driveway at the back exit. The spot was perfect. He'd have access to the street and a good view of Elise when she drove by. His vehicle wouldn't be on camera either. At 9:27 she appeared. She waited third in line at the red light in front of the hotel. He quickly jotted down the time, pulled the black hoodie up to conceal his face, then started his car and pulled out. He didn't have to follow so closely this time. He knew her route. He'd pull her over on Country Air Road. The black gloves and his kill bag sat on the passenger seat. He would use his own tools only if absolutely necessary. He'd prefer to use her yoga gear. A fitting end, in a way, and nothing to tie him to the crime. He saw her left blinker flash. The time was near, and his heart was racing. He'd wait until he was close to the park entrance to make his move, about halfway down that eerily dark road. She was about 4 car lengths ahead of him when it was time to act. He sped up, swerved around her Malibu, and slammed on his brakes in the center of the road, forcing her to stop. His plan was in motion, and within a split second he was at the driver's side window. "Ma'am, help me, please, I need a cell phone. My wife is having a seizure in the car. I'm lost." She stared, wide-eyed and hesitant, before lowering her window. "Wrong move, Elise. Hasn't anyone ever told you not to stop on dark, deserted roads for a stranger? You fool." With his leather-gloved hand balled in a tight fist, he reached through the window, punched her face as hard as he could, and knocked her out. He looked down the road both ways, no headlights. This task needed to be completed quickly and efficiently. With the driver's door open, he shoved her across the console to the passenger seat and slid in. He adjusted the driver's seat and drove the Malibu in through the park entrance, past the empty guard shack, and to the farthest end of the parking lot. He looked across the seat. She was still out. The dim interior light illuminated the shifter settings. He jerked the knob to park, turned off the car, and got out. The night was quiet and dark with nobody around. He had Elise all to himself. Dime walked around to the passenger side and opened the door. In an instant, she coiled her legs and kicked him in the face. Dime staggered back. "Now you're going to pay, you bitch." He grabbed her ankles as she screamed and kicked, but another hard punch to the face silenced her. He checked the contents of her yoga bag and found exactly what he needed. Stretch cords, a mat, and a pair of black tights would do the trick. He pulled the headlamp out of his pocket and secured it around his head, then grasped each of her ankles and yanked her out of the car. Her head hit the doorsill with a loud thump. Then he pulled her into the darkness. Dime trudged through a swampy area loaded with cattails, over the top of a ridge, and back down into a gully before releasing her legs and letting them drop to the ground. He unrolled the mat that was jammed into the front of his zipped jacket and spread it out, then took in his surroundings. A thick stand of trees and a lot of underbrush covered the ground in this secluded area. The location was perfect. He flopped her unconscious body onto the mat face down and hog-tied her hands and feet behind her back with the stretch cords, then moved on to the tights. With the tights wrapped twice around her neck and his knee on her back for leverage, he pulled them toward him. Gurgles sounded from deep within her throat, and her body jerked in protest until the life was choked out of her and she was dead. He released his grip, and her body fell forward with a thud. Dime covered her corpse with twigs, leaves, and branches he scoured from the area. He checked the time. 9:55. Taking a different route back to her car would be smart, and there wouldn't be noticeable disturbances in the ground cover. He didn't want to make the cops' job too easy for them. At her car, he pulled her cell phone and wallet from the yoga bag, removed the battery from the phone, and left her keys in the ignition. A token clue was placed on the hood of her car. The short jog to his Jeep took only 3 minutes. He started the engine, made a U-turn in the park entrance, and headed to his house 20 minutes away. He looked forward to morning and hoped there would be something on the local news about a missing yoga instructor. Dime checked his face in the bathroom mirror when he got home and saw a noticeable knot on his forehead from her kick. Luckily, she was wearing only tennis shoes. He applied ice and went downstairs to drink a beer. Elise's phone and wallet went behind the bookcase with Morris's belongings. Dime climbed the stairs, turned off the basement light, and got ready for bed. As he reached to turn out the bedroom table lamp, the voices spoke to him again. "See what she made you do. It's all her fault, as usual, the bitch." Chapter 11. I entered the bullpen with a cup of coffee from Pit Stop. I figured it wouldn't hurt to try it. Jack was a fan. A bag of a dozen assorted donuts would offer a good start to the morning, too. I'd be generous and share. I'd planned to work for a few hours, considering it was Saturday. Half-days were meant for catching up if there was something pressing, and clearing paperwork off my desk if there wasn't. I planned to follow up with the guys from the 3rd District Precinct and see if they got a blood match. Maybe soon we'd be able to release Morris's body to his uncle so he could arrange a proper burial. If the DNA from the crime scene matched and there was no other usable forensic evidence for us, we could wrap everything up on our end and have Morris's body transported to Milwaukee. Detective Lindstrom might have some information about his interview with LeJohn and Bobby, too, if he found them. I'd work until noon, then go home and begin sorting through things I wanted to get rid of. I'd promised Amber we'd talk about living arrangements. I hadn't given it any thought at all since she mentioned it. I wrote myself a note to call Melissa Matley again to confirm our appointment to look at condos tomorrow. It would be fun, and Amber would love to tag along. I was tired of Lance's calls and was ready to get on with my life. He wasn't coming back. I'd start going through things seriously, no more procrastinating. Jack walked in with coffee from Pit Stop, too. "You must have just missed me," I said. "This cup of mud isn't too bad." "You like?" He lifted his jumbo cup and slurped it from the opening in the plastic lid. "Yeah, I think it might grow on me, but I could never drink as much as you do. I'd have serious heartburn. Here, check out the donuts I bought. Help yourself." I laughed when he dove for the unopened bag. He would get first dibs. The lieutenant, Clayton, anybody else that happened by, and I would enjoy whatever was left. The phone rang on Jack's desk. "Washburn County Sheriff's Department, Detective Jack Steele speaking." "Yes." "Uh-huh." "Okay, sir, that's correct. Just turn left on Schmidt Road. We're right behind the courthouse. 2-story tan building, you can't miss it." "Yep, see you in a half hour." "Now what's going on?" I asked as I leaned my chair back and stretched. I had hoped for a quiet morning. Jack grabbed the notes he had just scribbled down and took a seat on one of my guest chairs. "Isn't this the name of your yoga instructor?" "What?" I sat up quickly, and my body involuntarily stiffened. "Let me see." I grabbed his notepad and read the name Elise Adams. Oh, no. Her husband says she didn't come home last night? Yeah, he's on his way in. Should be here in a half hour. He's dropping their kids off at the grandparents' house first. I'll give the lieutenant a heads up. We can't file a missing persons report yet, though. It's too early. Jack nodded. The loud buzz of the security door between the bullpen and the reception counter made me look up from my desk. Perry Adams was escorted in at 9:15 by Jan Seymour, one of the desk deputies that rotated between dispatch and the reception counter. Mr. Adams' eyes were visibly red and swollen. Jack and I stood and introduced ourselves when he walked in. I pointed to a guest chair at my desk. Mr. Adams, please take a seat. How do you take your coffee? Black, please. May we call you Perry? Sure, that's fine. Okay, start from the beginning. I want to tell you up front that I attend your wife's evening yoga classes. Elise is a wonderful woman. Then you were there last night? He asked, hope filling his eyes. No, sorry. I went to Thursday night's class. What can you tell us, Perry? Nothing out of the ordinary. She called at 9:15. Class just ended, and she was packing up. She wanted to know if we had enough milk for the kids' breakfast cereal. I checked and said we had plenty. That was it. He paused to compose himself and wipe a tear that rolled down his cheek. Our kids were already tucked into bed and sleeping. I went to bed myself and clicked on the TV. I intended to wait up for her to get home, but I must have fallen asleep. How long does it usually take Elise to get home from the yoga studio if she doesn't stop anywhere? Jack asked as he flipped the page in his notepad. Perry rubbed his forehead as he thought. I don't know, 20 minutes, I guess. So what happened when you woke up earlier? I asked. The kids ran into our bedroom wondering where breakfast was, around 7 o'clock. I looked to Elise's side of the bed, and it hadn't been slept in. I knew right away something was wrong. Clayton was thoughtful enough to grab the carafe and fill our coffee cups. I nodded a thank you. Go ahead, I said. I ran downstairs and searched the house. I called out her name, but she didn't answer. That's when I opened the garage door and saw her side of the garage was empty. I started calling her cell phone right away, but it went straight to voicemail like it was turned off. What time was that? I don't know, around 7:15, I guess. How many times did you try her phone? 6 or 10, I don't remember. A lot. Jack glanced at his notes. You called here and spoke to me at 8:05. Yeah, that sounds right. Now what? We have to find her. You'll start searching, right? Elise doesn't do this type of thing. She's a responsible woman and a good mom. Jack flipped the page in his notepad again. We need to know the make and model of your wife's car and the route she takes home. A person has to be gone for 24 hours before we can file an official missing persons report, but we can do some looking around. We'll have a few deputies check her usual route home. Would you mind drawing us a map from the yoga studio to your house with the street names she takes? Maybe she just broke down somewhere. Sure, but that wouldn't explain why she didn't call home or answer her cell. I handed Perry a sheet of printer paper so he could get started. I sensed Elise was in some kind of trouble, but saying she could have had car problems and keeping him busy might relieve his anxiety for the time being. Clayton. Yeah, Sergeant. Head to the strip mall and check every business that has camera surveillance facing the parking lot. I want to see Elise get into her car and leave. We may be able to get other footage along her route home, if that's indeed where she was heading. What is that supposed to mean? Perry asked indignantly. I put my hand up as if to pump the brakes. Give me just a second, Perry. Clayton, get video copies back here from every angle of the parking lot. Round up Billy and Todd on your way and get them in here to go over the footage. If we're going to do this by her last known whereabouts, then the strip mall belongs to the city. They may want to take the lead. We'll take the city limits out into the county jurisdiction where their residence is if we have to. I'm fine with that. Either way, call the police department and give them a heads up. We aren't going to make this an active case yet unless something looks suspicious on the video feed. Got it, boss. Okay, Perry. What year, make, model, and color is Elise's car? It's a white 2014 Chevy Malibu sedan. I can't think of the plate number right now. I'm too frazzled. Jack, can you pull up her DMV records and get that tag number? Yep, no problem. He had his pen ready to write it down. How's the marriage, Perry? Anything hinky going on, like affairs, dishonesty, or financial problems? Have you fought recently? He buried his face in his hands. No, of course not. Our marriage is perfect. We have 2 great kids. I love my wife, Sergeant Monroe. We love each other. I glanced at Jack and gave him a concerned look. Perry finished the map of the route Elise usually took home and handed it to me. I excused myself and went out front to talk to dispatch. Jan, I need you to get this out. I handed her the sheet of paper. She put on her reading glasses and looked it over. I want you to have a few deputies check out this route. Call North Bend Police Department and have someone meet Clayton at the strip mall. We're looking for a white 2014 Malibu sedan. Get the tag number from Jack. He's checking on it right now. The car could be broken down along the road or possibly in a parking lot at a hotel, restaurant, or business. Run the gamut. Get some eyes out there and keep me posted. It isn't officially a missing persons case yet, but with the crap that went down earlier in the week, I'd rather be safe than sorry. Chapter 12. By 10 o'clock, Clayton had checked back in. He and Detective Don Miller from the police department looked over several tapes from Pegasus Greek Diner next door to the yoga studio. Nothing appeared unusual or suspicious. The video timestamp showed Elise climbing into her car at 9:17. By the time she exited the parking lot, 6 empty cars were in front of the restaurant, and another had just driven away. Clayton said the videos showed her pulling out of the parking lot in the direction she would take to go home. No other car followed hers. They viewed several tapes from different angles of the parking lot, including the back lot where the dumpsters were located, but nothing seemed amiss. The business owners made us several video copies, Jade. They gave me and the police department a stick to review the footage on our own. I'm going to take it down to tech. If anyone can catch something we didn't see, it's Todd and Billy. They're the best when it comes to fine details. Okay, go ahead and get them downstairs. Get me a list of all the businesses along her route home that have camera surveillance. I want to see her car pass by every one of them until there aren't any more businesses. Let the city boys know that too, I said. I'm on it, boss. I entered the small cafeteria where Perry sat alone. I took a seat next to him. Can I get you something from the vending machine? No, thanks. Sergeant Monroe, I saw the article in the newspaper a few days ago about the man who was found at Cedar Lake. He was murdered, wasn't he? Perry, it's an ongoing investigation. I'm not at liberty to discuss it with you. You read what the media wrote just like everyone else. What if... Let's hold on for a bit, I interrupted. When was the last time you tried calling Elise? 5 minutes ago. Still goes directly to voicemail. I felt the phone vibrate in my pocket. Excuse me for a second. I walked over to the row of vending machines at the end of the cafeteria and checked the text. Lieutenant Clark wanted me in his office immediately. Perry, I'll be right back. Why don't you make a call to your folks? Talk to your kids, reassure them. Sit tight. Yeah, okay. I headed back through the bullpen. Jack got up and was right on my heels. The lieutenant texted you? Yep. I rapped on the door and he waved us in. Close the door, Jade. Sit down. What's up, Lieutenant? I just got a call from the park patrol out at Glacier Hills. He recognized the white Malibu he heard about on his police scanner. It's sitting vacant at the farthest end of the parking lot. He felt the hood. The engine was cold. He said a lone dime sat on the hood. Round up everyone and get out there now. Shit. Morris King had a dime in his pocket, nothing else. Boss, that sounds like a calling card to me. The person Morris met up with that night calls himself Dime. I know, Jade. We'll go over all of that again after we see what's going on in the park. Right now we have to move. What do you want me to do with Perry? Have Billings sit on him while we check the area. If we find Elise's body, the husband stays for interrogation, even if he isn't our main suspect. Right now, we don't have anyone else. Get Kyle and Dan out there right away. Have somebody call Doug and Jason. If we find a body, they're going to be working today, too. It's not sounding good. Let's go." My cell phone buzzed as Jack and I headed to one of the cruisers. Amber was texting me, wanting to know if she could come over. She wasn't scheduled to work until 6 o'clock. We could have a girls' day, do lunch, and discuss the living arrangements. I sent a quick message to her. "Sorry, sis, I have an emergency. I'll get back to you as soon as I can." I jammed the phone into my pocket and zipped it up. Jack flipped on the red and blues as he squealed out of the parking lot and headed west. We arrived at Glacier Hills County Park in less than 10 minutes. 4 patrol cruisers, Clayton and the forensic team arrived ahead of us and were already in the parking lot. "Here, see anything?" I asked as we approached. "We were waiting for you, Sergeant," one of the patrol officers said. "Did anyone talk to the guy from Park Security?" Clayton responded. "I got his statement. He said he only touched the hood of the car with the back of his hand, nothing else." "Okay, let's spread out. This is a big park. I want to take a quick look at the vehicle first." I pointed ahead at the expanse in front of us. "You guys start searching that meadow. We're looking for a 30-ish blonde woman, shorter than me. She'll likely be wearing workout clothes. Let's move." Kyle and Dan were already at the Malibu doing a quick once-over to see if anything looked suspicious. Goosebumps rose on my arms. I felt certain we were looking at a crime scene. I didn't view Elise as somebody that would wander off for an overnight hike in the park. Plus, there was that damn dime. Jack and I walked over and joined Kyle and Dan. I leaned over the hood and felt it with my gloved hand. Stone cold. The dime sat about a foot back, dead center where it wouldn't be overlooked. Kyle snapped a few pictures. "Anyone take a peek inside?" "We've only looked through the windows, haven't tried the doors yet. The yoga bag in the back seat looks like it's been rifled through. The doors are unlocked and the keys are still in the ignition." Damn, that isn't a good sign. Who would wander off and leave their keys in the ignition with the doors unlocked? "Kyle, did you take any pictures through the windows?" "Yep, all done. Let's open her up." When Dan opened the driver's side door, I immediately noticed that something was off. I only had a minute to process what I was thinking. The search was more important right now. We had people spread out in the meadow to our west, and Jack and I were heading into the woods in a few minutes. "Hang on a second here. Jack, how tall are you?" "Just over 6 foot." We both looked at the seat position. I knew Elise was shorter than me. I climbed in and sat. My feet didn't reach the gas or brake. "Jack, have a seat." He climbed in after I stepped out. His feet reached the pedals perfectly. "Okay, we know she didn't drive this car back here herself. How tall did Perry look to you?" Jack rubbed his chin. "Probably your height, 5'8" or so. He isn't a tall man." Yeah, I thought the same thing. "Okay, let's head out. Guys, get pictures of that seat position and do your usual on-site routine. Photograph the surroundings before the car is moved, then get the flatbed out here. This vehicle is going back to the evidence garage with us. Has Doug been called?" "He's on call and waiting for us to notify him if necessary," Kyle said. I saw the lieutenant pull in and park his Crown Vic. "Clayton, update the boss. Tell him we're heading into the woods." Chapter 13. "How do you want to proceed?" Jack asked as we stared at the expanse of heavy woods ahead. I'd been to Glacier Hills many times. Lance and I used to hike quite a bit, and I knew the park was well over 100 acres. There looked to be at least 50 acres of dense forest with hiking and snowmobile trails in front of us. People used the meadow to run their dogs, and it was a beautiful habitat for wildlife, primarily deer. That was also a good 50 acres. Shit, I don't know. First off, our perp is at least your height and likely big and strong. Elise is shorter than me and slender. I bet she doesn't weigh much more than 100 pounds. Heck, Morris was a lightweight. This guy could probably carry or drag a body for a while without losing steam. I looked at the trails, hard-packed from plenty of use. No shoe prints or evidence of someone being dragged. "Do you think the city boys would lend a hand? I don't want every weekend warrior out here along with the media hounds, especially when we don't know what we have yet." For all we know, Elise could have had a boyfriend drive her car back here and park it. They could have taken off together.
Doubt it. That doesn't explain the dime on the hood,
Jack said. I know. Just wishful thinking. Now I know why Morris only had a dime in his pocket and no other change. It was deliberate. I looked around and thought of the magnitude of the searching we had in store. I think we're going to need the dogs. It will make finding Elise go a lot faster. I radioed Clayton. Hey, call the police department. Tell them we need the dogs and any available bodies who are free and willing to help out here ASAP. I'll owe them a beer at Joey's when this mess is over with. Have the dogs get Elise's scent off the yoga bag. Hurry, Clayton. We need help. Keep everyone else out. Shut this park down after they arrive and tell Clark the plan.
I'm on it, boss.
Jack and I walked down to where the trees met the meadow. We needed a definite starting point instead of just entering the woods in the center. We decided to walk in a back-and-forth grid about 20 feet from each other. We began the search and called out to Elise every few minutes. The forest was relatively quiet other than our own voices, birds chirping and squirrels skittering about, chasing each other from tree to tree. From the meadow, the voices of the guys calling Elise's name echoed back to us. With the heavy leaf cover from the oaks, maples, and basswoods in our search area, the canopy was dark, making any body hidden there easy to miss. 30 minutes into our search, we heard voices and dogs barking from back at the parking lot. I took a deep breath of relief, hoping the canine unit could speed up the search. So far, we had nothing. I made a quick call to Billings to ask how Perry was holding up. Billings was the best person to sit with Perry. He had a calming personality that worked well in this type of situation. Having a 17-year-old daughter had taught him a lot about being patient. Billings was 44, wore his head clean-shaved, and had a perfectly groomed goatee. He was the typical teddy bear which our department needed, and I knew I could trust him with handling Perry for as long as he had to. The problem with sending Perry home was that he'd have to pass the park on his way. He'd see the squad cars sitting alongside the road at the park entrance. For now, I didn't want him to interrupt our search. He might have been involved in some way, too. He had to stay put. Finding Elise was of the utmost importance right now, and when we did find her, I wasn't expecting anything good. Billings said Perry was okay for now and was sitting tight. He also told me that Lieutenant Colgate from Milwaukee had called and said the blood evidence found at the abandoned house matched Morris's that we had on file. That house was indeed the crime scene. I had to process how we'd go forward with that bit of information. It looked as though we had a killer with a calling card and some type of agenda. This could be someone who was just getting started. Billings also mentioned that Detective Lindstrom had cleared Bobby and LeJohn. They were in Detroit together most of last week, as confirmed by people in Milwaukee and Detroit. They were dead ends. I pressed my fist into my eyes and gave them a thorough rub. Allergies affected me every year at this time. Billings, call Lieutenant Colgate back and tell him what's going on with Elise. Have his detectives talk to Morris's boys and Terrence again. We need a list of names. I don't care if it was Morris's doctor, dentist, grandma, friend, or enemy. We need names of everyone they can think of that Morris had contact with. We'll get the same type of list from Perry and see if there are any names that crossed both lists. Tell Colgate I'll follow up with him after we find Elise. We've got to nip this nutcase in the bud, and quick.
Got it, Sergeant.
Jack and I had covered only a small part of the woods when he suggested I head back to the parking lot and group up with the guys that had just arrived. I agreed and left.
Jade, good to see you again, but not under these circumstances.
Lieutenant Brian Colbert held out his hand and shook mine. Detective Don Miller stood at his side, along with 2 patrol officers, the canine unit, and their handler. The 2 German shepherds sat at attention, their ears perked and ready to go on command. I wiped my brow and took a deep breath. Guys, thanks for assisting in bringing out the dogs. We really need them. This park is too big for the few of us. I have 3 officers in that meadow to our right, and Detective Steele and I were working on the wooded area to our left. We haven't gotten far. Lieutenant Clark hung up from a call and joined us.
So, how do you want to proceed with the canines?
The handler spoke up.
We'll need the woman's scent, and then we'll split the dogs up. One can go with the officers in the field, the other in the woods.
"Okay, over here," I said as I led them to the car. "Her yoga bag is in the back seat with some articles of clothing inside." The handler nodded. "That should do it." Once the dogs had Elise's scent, we split up and headed back out, the German shepherds leading the way. We entered the woods again and met up with Jack about a quarter of the way in. We followed 30 feet behind the German shepherd that was assigned to us. Within 20 minutes, Odie, the canine we were with, seemed to be onto something. He caught a scent and ran ahead with his nose glued to the ground. He barked, skirted around a marshy area, and picked up speed. As the 5 of us reached the hill Odie had just crested, we saw him waiting below. He barked his alert and sat in a wooded gully next to an unusual mound dead center on the canopy floor. My heart sank when we reached the spot, and I saw a piece of lime-green cloth and the blue yoga mat sticking out from below the brush and twigs. We knew it was Elise. We cordoned off the area and radioed Dan and Kyle, who were still going over the Malibu. We needed them at our location now. We had another DB on our hands. I told them to call Doug and Jason. We needed them, too. Chapter 14. "She's in full rigor," Doug said as he glanced at his wristwatch. He turned to look at us over his shoulder. "I'd say she's been deceased 12 to 15 hours, possibly more." Dan and Kyle searched the scene for telltale signs and trace evidence. The killer seemed to have made sure his victims were left outdoors in remote areas. Animals, the temperature, and weather conditions could affect our scenes and remove any signs that a human had passed by. I was sure he'd counted on that. Elise had no defensive wounds, no trace under her nails, just dirt and weeds covering her body, along with the black ants that had recently gathered. She did have dried blood in her nose, her face was black and blue, and her mouth was jammed full of leaves. "What do you make of her facial injuries, and why would she have leaves in her mouth?" I could barely look at her. Her face was badly bruised, and the sight of her body, stiffened in that unnatural, hog-tied position, disgusted me. "It looks like she was beaten about the face before she was killed. I'll go out on a limb right now and say her nose was broken. I'll know more once she's on the table, though. The leaves, I'm guessing he wanted to shut her up," Doug said. I stared at Elise again. Just 2 nights ago, she led my yoga class. She was vibrant, happy, and full of life. She was an innocent woman and someone I viewed as more than an acquaintance. She was a friend. Nobody deserved her fate. The very things that made her happy had been used to take her life. I was more than pissed, and the sick killer still roamed free. He'd left no evidence, and just as with Morris, we had nothing to go on. We were left shaking our heads. The only thing certain was that we were dealing with the same killer in both cases, the man that called himself Dime. With the sound of a zipper being fastened, Elise was sealed into the body bag, and the guys loaded her onto a backboard, secured her with straps, and carried her out of the woods. With her body in the van, Doug and Jason left for the medical examiner's office. We'd need her clothing gone over carefully when Kyle and Dan got back to the forensics lab. We had to find some clue to catch this killer. We thanked everyone that had helped us search for Elise and parted ways. Our deputies pulled down the yellow police tape and opened up the driveway that led into the park. The officers from the police station left with the dogs. Jack, Clayton, Lieutenant Clark, and I stood in the parking lot discussing this new turn of events. Kyle and Dan waited until the Malibu was loaded onto the flatbed before leaving. The car would be taken to the evidence garage, where they would go over it more thoroughly. They had to piece the puzzle together and see if there was anything of value we could use. Lieutenant Clark spoke up. "You know we're going to have to search Perry's house. I highly doubt if he's involved in any way, shape, or form, but we'll get our chops busted if we don't do it. I'm calling it in. We should have a warrant within the hour. We're going to have to sit on him until the search is over." Perry had been detained at the station for hours. Billings had kept him calm and well-caffeinated for most of the day. Now came the hard part, telling him that his wife was dead and we had no idea why. "I know one thing for sure," Jack said. I wiped my dirty hands on my pants. Yeah, what's that? We don't know any more now than we did before, and I'm going to need a stiff drink at some point before the day is over. Back at the sheriff's department, I took Perry into one of the interrogation rooms to tell him the devastating news. My least favorite part of the job was informing family members of their loved one's untimely death, and today would be particularly hard. No way on earth would I tell Perry how Elise was found. She was dead, and nothing would bring her back. He didn't need to know the horrific details. I told him we found her in the park, and only an autopsy could definitively tell us how she died. It could take a few days. He sobbed openly as he leaned over the table with his head in his hands. Was she murdered? Was it the same guy that killed the boy at Cedar Lake? What am I going to tell my kids? Why Elise? I shook my head and looked at the floor. Perry, I don't have those answers. I need to tell you, though, that your house is being searched as we speak. That doesn't mean we're pointing fingers at you, but we do need to clear you of this crime so you can take care of your family. Would you mind giving us a DNA sample, too? Everything we're asking is to help eliminate you as a suspect. Sure, go ahead. I have nothing to hide. I motioned for Kyle to come in. He swabbed the inside of Perry's mouth and took the sample downstairs. I'm sorry for your loss, Perry. Elise's car is in our evidence garage. I thought you should know. It may be a while before we can release it to you. What about Elise? Where is she? She's downstairs in the ME's office. I want to see her. Don't I need to identify her? I couldn't let Perry see Elise yet. Rigor had her body stiffened in a horribly contorted position. We'd wait another day or so for the rigor to relax before having him ID her. Yes, you do, but not just yet. I knew Elise, Perry. It's her. We'll call you in a couple of days to come in for an official ID. Right now you need to call your parents and tell them what happened. They have the kids, don't they? We can't let you leave yet, but you should make that call. Sergeant, please find the person that did this to Elise. I don't have a wife anymore, and my kids just lost their mother. I don't know how to go forward from here. I squeezed his hand. You have my word. We'll find this monster and bring him to justice. I watched as Perry was led to a phone. We had to confiscate his cell phone. It was protocol. I said a silent prayer for him and his family. He was a broken man, and my heart ached for his loss, but we had to stay focused on catching this madman. I went back to the bullpen where Jack, Clayton, and Billings sat. The lieutenant came out of his office and joined us at a corner table. How's Perry doing? Lieutenant Clark asked. Not good. How are we going to find this killer, Lieutenant? We don't have a damn shred of evidence. Forensics has pictures, Doug has a body, and us? We have nothing. No leads, no suspect, no motive, no eyewitnesses, and no evidence. Okay, then, what do we have? Jack spoke up. We think the perp is at least my height, and he must be strong and fit. He's likely from around here because he knows the area well. He may be someone that deals and takes drugs, hence his nickname, Dime. There isn't a connection between Morris and Elise as far as we know. Perry didn't seem to recognize Morris's name other than from what he read in the paper. We have to follow up on that anyway to make sure there's no connection whatsoever between the two. Maybe Elise knew someone Morris knew. We're already on that, Lieutenant, I said. Billings told Lieutenant Colgate that they need more names on Morris's end. We can cross-reference the list I intend to get from Perry. We'll see if anything shakes out. I'll ask him to start on it while he's waiting here anyway. Good. Just think of every angle you can. We need Perry to give us a list of his own acquaintances, too. What does he do for a living? Jack checked his notes. He's a CPA. Lieutenant Clark slapped his hand on the table. Okay, follow that, too. Maybe somebody didn't like the way Perry prepared their taxes. I don't care how stupid it sounds. Check everything. Talk to the North Bend PD and see if they want to lend a hand. They can dig in deeper with the business owners from the strip mall. Maybe somebody there had a beef with Elise. I'll have a few deputies pull extra shifts. We need videos from businesses along her route home.
Just because nobody followed her out of the strip mall doesn't mean they weren't waiting somewhere else. Get some deputies out there collecting video feed from every business that has surveillance cameras. Get the tech guys on it. I don't care if they have to pull double shifts. Let's move." "Got it, boss," Billings said as he scratched his goatee. "I'll get more deputies in here." "Okay, get a plan underway. We need something solid. We have to apprehend this maniac before he becomes a serial killer."
Lieutenant Clark cracked his knuckles.
"I'll call downtown and see how much the city can pitch in. If this gets worse, we may have to call in help from the State Patrol, too."
Chapter 15. Clayton and Billings went through Morris's file again. They searched for hours for any clue that would connect him and Elise. It didn't make sense. We needed to gather names and find a common thread. I looked at the clock. 4:30. What had started out as a half day of work had turned into another murder with no leads. "I'm ordering a couple of pizzas. We can't live on vending machine candy bars forever." I called Dick's Pizzeria and placed the order. They said to expect the pizzas in 30 minutes. Jack and I went downstairs to talk to Kyle and Dan. We entered the forensics lab. I wanted to ask if there was anything new, but their blank looks told me all I needed to know. They didn't have anything to offer. There wasn't any trace evidence on Elise's clothing, the stretch cord, tights, or mat. They hadn't found any fingerprints other than Elise's on the car's door handles or steering wheel. The only evidence on her clothing was from the park: dirt, leaves, and twigs. Jack and I sat at the table with Dan and Kyle and brainstormed. I was sure they needed a break anyway. "I'm thinking this guy knows how to play the game. It may be his first rodeo or not, but he knows how to avoid being detected. He doesn't use the same kill method twice, and we have no idea where he's going to pop up next or who his target will be. He leaves nothing behind and no trace of his actions. What are we missing?" I asked. I looked from face to face, hoping for an epiphany, an aha moment from anyone, but nobody said a word. "You guys didn't find anything at either scene, such as a murder weapon, fingerprints, or tire tracks. Morris had a knife according to his boys, and he was killed with a knife, but none was found. Elise was killed with her own yoga gear. It can't be a coincidence that this killer doesn't have to bring his own weapon to commit the crime. Even though there isn't a connection between the two of them that we know of, the killer has chosen Morris and Elise deliberately. These aren't random murders. He knows who he's going to target and how he's going to kill them. There had to be something that connected Elise to Morris." "Or someone," Kyle said. Jack spoke up. "Maybe that's it. It's possible that the connection isn't actually between Morris and Elise at all. It could be someone the killer knows that connects them." I squeezed my temples. "That's awesome. How in the world are we going to figure that one out?" I breathed a deep sigh. "Okay, guys, we need a mental break." I took the liberty of ordering a couple of pizzas. I glanced at the clock. "They should be here in about 20 minutes. Come on up and join us in the lunchroom. I'll tell Doug and Jason." I entered the autopsy room and found Doug sitting at his computer. He glanced up when I approached him. "Sergeant, what can I do for you?" "We have a few pizzas on the way. They should be here in 15 minutes or so. Come on up and join us. Where's Jason?" I noticed Doug had just finished filling out the online paperwork for Morris's transport to Milwaukee. He got up and turned on the printer. "I sent him home. There's nothing more to do tonight. We're okay to release Mr. King's body, right?" he asked. "Yeah, that should be fine. There's no forensic evidence on him. The tox report showed traces of THC, nothing else, right?" "That's right." "Okay then, we have all the photos and documentation we need. Lieutenant Clark said I could sign off on it. Go ahead and shut it down. There's nothing you can do for Elise until the rigor relaxes anyway." Doug muttered something under his breath. "Did you say something?" "Yeah, I said I'll be up in a few minutes." We gathered in the lunchroom, each of us scarfing down slices of pizza like hungry animals. With everything going on today, it was likely that nobody had thought much about eating until now. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I excused myself when I saw the call was from Amber. I stood by the beverage station and answered. "Hi, sis." What has you so busy on a Saturday?" she asked. "Are you still at the station?" "Yeah, sorry, today has been a total nightmare." "Can you talk about it?" "Nope, not yet. I have a feeling work is going to take center stage for a while. You know, I just thought of something you could do that would help us both out." "Really? I'll do whatever I can." "How about taking the lead on looking at condos for me? I have an appointment with Melissa Maitely at Realty World tomorrow to look at 4 places. She has a good reputation and is a buyer's agent. She knows what I'm looking for and seems like a perfect fit for us. I was going to compare realtors, but why bother?" "So are you saying I can move in with you?" I heard her excitement through the phone line. I loved my little sister, and just hearing somebody that actually sounded happy warmed my heart. "Maybe, but I do have conditions. Anything." I looked back at the table. I wanted to keep my conversation with Amber private, but our lunchroom wasn't that big. I tried to whisper. "You can't shrink me, and I mean about anything. No relationship shrinking, no work shrinking. If I feel like sharing, I'll let you know." "Done. I promise you won't be my test subject. But we can talk about sisterly things, right?" "Sure, as long as my private life and work cases don't end up as one of your school essays. Also, you can only move yourself and your clothes for now. Once we actually move into a condo, you can bring the rest of your stuff from Mom's house. We aren't moving it twice, deal?" "Deal." "Okay, then. Can you do me a favor before you head to work?" "Yep, shoot." "Call Melissa and tell her she can expand her search parameters to include 3-bedroom condos. Introduce yourself and tell her you're going out with her tomorrow on my behalf." "Got it. Give me her number." I rattled off Melissa's phone number and told Amber that some of us from the department might stop in for a drink later when we left work. I was pretty certain we'd all need one. After the lieutenant called the North Bend PD, they collected videos from a handful of businesses on Washington Street. Between their tech teams and ours, they would start going through the videos later when the evening shift began. We said goodnight to the deputies in the bullpen. We left them with a to-do list and promised to be back first thing in the morning. I told them that a call should be coming in soon from the deputies searching Perry's house. If they got the all's clear on the house, they could release Perry. "Make sure he eats something, too, and try to keep him comfortable," I said. "Call me if he's let go tonight." "Yes, Mom," Mitch Bryant, one of our evening deputies, said. Smartass. "Okay, we're out of here." A couple of drinks to wind down and a soft pillow would do it for me. Tomorrow would be another day at the station. I got into my car and led the way. We entered Joey's Sports Bar and Grill at 7 o'clock. Jack, Dan, Kyle, Clayton, and Billings joined me. We needed a mental break from these cases, even if it was just for a few drinks together on a Saturday night. The place was crowded and loud, the perfect distraction. Amber had worked part-time at Joey's since she turned 21. Our family had known Joey Spaulding and his wife Emily for years, and when I was a college kid myself, I used to frequent the place often. Amber was the perfect bartender. As beautiful and outgoing as she was, people flocked to the bar to sit up close and personal with her. She had a magnetic personality and drew people in. Amber was fun-loving and engaging, but also sympathetic, and she listened to the late-night woes of the sad sack whose relationship or dead-end job was taking them nowhere. Her behavioral science classes served her well. "Bless her heart," I said as we made our way through the crowd. "She saved us a table." Amber grinned and waved from behind the bar and pointed to the table that had a reserved place card sitting on top. Classic rock music blasted from the jukebox to our right, and the long, horseshoe-shaped bar with the deep red vinyl diamond-tufted front was to our left. A row of matching bar stools held 25 or more people, mostly college kids. 10 bar tables, filled with people enjoying the weekend, were scattered throughout the large establishment, and TVs were perched on every corner shelf near the ceiling. Pine paneling and old-time beer signs gave the place an up-north vibe, even though it was located on West Lincoln Street and had been there for the past 30 years. "Okay, I've got the first round," Jack said. "I'll grab a couple of pitchers of beer." I got up and headed to the bar with Jack. "I'll go with you. We need a few bowls of pretzels, too." Amber leaned over the bar and gave us each a kiss on the cheek while the pitchers were filling at the tap. "We need pretzels too, sis," I said. Jack teased Amber while we waited for the beer. "So I hear a change for the better is coming. Anytime you need me to straighten Bruce out, just say the word." Amber laughed. "I can't wait to move in with Jade. That guy is sick, and I don't mean in a good way." She lifted the heavy pitchers and placed them on the bar. Jack handed her a 20 and told her to keep the change. She gave him another kiss on the cheek and filled 2 snack bowls for me. One had pretzels, the other popcorn, but it would take a lot more than pretzels and popcorn to help me forget those images of Elise that were playing in my mind. For now, knocking back a few beers with friends would have to do it. Chapter 16. Dime stood near the entrance. He blended in with everyone else at the crowded establishment. He intended to stay by the door. The view was better from that vantage point anyway, and he could make a quick exit if needed. He pulled his hoodie up and covered his head as he watched Amber from a distance. What a beauty she was. Good family genes. He licked his lips. He'd have to get to know her better on a much more personal level. The voices in his head spoke up. In time. Everything has to be at the right time. He smiled and answered, "Yeah, I know." Dime overheard Amber talking to a customer at the end of the bar. He inched closer so he could hear the conversation. With all the patrons in the bar enjoying their Saturday night, he was invisible to everyone anyway. When he'd heard enough, he slipped out of the door. Dime climbed into his Jeep, checked the time on his watch, and wrote it down. The page contained everything related to Amber Monroe. The name of Joey's Sports Bar and Grill, along with the time and date, were listed under her name. He pulled out of the parking lot and drove the 20 minutes to his house in Jackson City. The basement sanctuary, his place for solitude and clarity, awaited his arrival. Classical music played in the background as he got comfortable on the wooden chair. He pulled the usual Stella Artois out of the refrigerator and placed a cardboard coaster beneath it so a water ring wouldn't form on the side table. His notebook rested on his lap. With his reading glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, he reviewed everything he had written down. He'd overheard Amber telling that customer at the bar how excited she was to be looking at condos with Melissa Maitely tomorrow. According to her sister Jade, Melissa was the best realtor in town. Melissa would list Jade's house for sale and find them a great condo. Dime decided he'd pay Melissa a visit tomorrow before Amber showed up. Realty World might have to hire a new agent soon. "I'll act like I'm new in town and plan to buy a house. She'll happily give me all her contact information, as ambitious as she sounds. Melissa and I are going to have a private showing real soon." Killing Melissa would fit into his plan perfectly. Nobody would expect that. She wasn't on anybody's radar. With her occupation, she could easily meet up with foul play. Being a hot-looking female realtor was stupid on so many levels. Any nutcase could call and lure her away to a remote location and have their way with her. He stared at her picture and profile on the Realty World website. Melissa Maitely was single, 32, and ambitious. She was one of their top earners. He'd have a great time alone with her before she would die. He thought about the best way to kill her. It had to be relevant to her job. That seemed to be his new M.O. I could jam the house listing sheet down her throat and choke her with it. Maybe I could impale her with the stake from the for sale sign. He chuckled at his options. I have to find a very remote home to have her show me, something secluded and very expensive. It has to be a home that isn't shown often because of the high asking price, and preferably with acreage. I don't want nosy neighbors seeing me. He took a sip of his beer as he scanned his tablet for listings with acreage. This one looks interesting. An aerial photo showed this private enclave on Oriole Lane as the ultimate gentleman's farm. A 4,000-square-foot home with a 5-car garage and several outbuildings was their most expensive listing. It was being offered with 17 acres, 10 in open field, perfect for raising horses. The house sat in the middle of 7 beautifully wooded acres located at the end of a meandering, paved driveway. This was a prestigious sanctuary for the most discriminating buyer wanting privacy. Yes, this one will definitely do. I'm all about privacy. I'll check out the area tomorrow. Chapter 17. Lieutenant Colgate had several detectives working the Morris King end of the case. They paid Terrence a visit and had him write down every person's name he could think of that Morris had known, no matter how insignificant the relationship might have been. Terrence came up with 14 names. They rounded up Morris's boys, too, at the park. Another 26 names were added to the list. Detective Lindstrom called my desk at noon. "Washburn County Sheriff's Department, Sergeant Monroe speaking. How may I help you?" "Sergeant, Detective Lindstrom here." "Hi, Bill. What have you got?" "Well, first I wanted to extend my sympathy. I heard about the second victim from the lieutenant. I hear you knew the deceased." "Yeah, it's such a shame. She was actually my yoga instructor and a casual friend. We're expecting her husband soon. He said he was getting together every name he could think of for us, including his own acquaintances. How's it going on your end?" Jack held up the coffee pot. I nodded. He poured me a fresh cup. "We have 40 names between his little gang boys and the uncle. I can email or fax you the list." I took a sip and responded. "That would be great. Fax is fine. I'm not optimistic that we'll find a match, but at least we can rule out a connection if none of the names cross-reference. Oh, by the way, we're releasing Morris's body back to his uncle on Monday. A transport will deliver Morris's body to... Hang on. I checked my notes. Shoot, all I have is Cavalry Baptist Church. That isn't going to work. I'll have to call Terrence King and find out what funeral home he plans to use." "Don't worry about it, Sergeant. I'll handle it. You have enough on your plate." "Are you sure?" "No problem." "Okay, you should be getting the fax any minute now. Keep us posted if you get a match. Better yet, keep us posted anyway. Enjoy your Sunday if you can." "Same to you. Goodbye." I hung up the phone and pulled the sheet with the list of names out of the fax machine. Now all I needed was for Perry to finish his list. He was released late last night and apparently spent the night at his folks' house. He called in a half-hour ago and said he needed to stop at home to pick up his own tax client list. "Is Doug here?" Jack asked. "I haven't seen him. Maybe he's taking today off. Elise's autopsy will probably go better tomorrow anyway, but he's going to have to make that decision. Perry will have to come back again for the ID. Maybe a picture of her face is all that's necessary for now. We could probably show Perry that much." The door between the reception counter and the bullpen buzzed open, and Perry was escorted in. He looked a mess. Bags hung under his still red, puffy eyes. His hair looked as though it hadn't been washed or combed. He walked in with a manila folder in his hand. We stood and greeted him, then I offered him something to drink. Jack pointed to the small table near the wall. "Let's sit over here, Perry. Jade, do you have the list from Detective Lindstrom?" "Yep, sure do." I carried 2 cups of coffee and the sheet of paper to the table and took a seat. Jack was on one side of Perry, and I was on the other. "So this list contains your and Elise's friends, family, and casual acquaintances?" "Yes, it's all I could come up with. Here's the list of all my clients' names, too." "Thank you. This shouldn't take long. Would you like something from the vending machine? Chips, cookies, anything?" "No, I'm fine." I knew he wasn't fine, and I'd heard he didn't eat anything last night when the deputies offered him food. "Are the kids at your parents' house?" "Yeah. Can we cut the small talk and just get this done? I'd like to be with my children." I replied, "Sure thing." I made a copy of the list Detective Lindstrom sent so Jack could compare names to Perry's client list, and I could compare the names to Perry's personal list. I ran down both sheets side by side with my index finger, hoping for a match. Nothing. Perry had 90 tax clients, and Jack checked them all. No names matched. Normally, the husband was the primary suspect, at least in the beginning. We checked everything in Perry's house, and it was clean. Todd, Billy, Luke, and Lee went through his phone records, credit card receipts, and bank statements. He hadn't purchased or added to Elise's life insurance policy. We knew Perry wasn't involved. Okay, that should do it for today. When do I get to see Elise? What's the holdup with the ID? The Emmy isn't here right now, Perry. It will most likely be tomorrow. I'll call you when the time is right. I thanked him and sent him on his way. Jack sighed and plopped down at his desk. Looks like we're back to square one. Do you think we'll solve this case? Some murderers are never caught, you know. Look at Dennis Rader. He probably would never have been caught if he hadn't been sending letters and taunting the cops himself. That was still 15 years after the fact. I know we're good cops. Jack agreed. Of course we are, but this guy is smart. He knows how to avoid detection, and he's careful. When was the last time you talked to your old man? A couple of weeks ago. Do you think I should call him? Maybe an opinion from someone that isn't involved could shed some light. Maybe. I stood just when my cell phone buzzed. Amber was calling. I assumed she was going to tell me all about the condos she'd toured with Melissa. Hi, sis. Are you guys done? Not yet. We have one more place to look at today. This is so much fun. Melissa's a pretty cool lady. I could see you two hitting it off as friends. You have similar personalities. I chuckled and had actually thought the same thing myself when I met Melissa. Well, do you have any favorite condos yet? You have to let her know your favorites so I can go back and look at them too. Oh, for sure. I don't think we should even bother her with the 2-bedroom units anymore. Don't forget, I'm going to help with the rent and bills. 3-bedroom units are where it's at. I laughed again. Okay, just keep the listing sheets of the ones you like. Come over tonight and have dinner with me. We'll catch up and bring the sheets with you. I'm excited to see them. Will do. I'll be over by 5. Sounds like you guys are going to be roomies soon, Jack said as I hung up. He leaned back in his heavy leather office chair and entwined his fingers behind his head. Man, this is a comfortable chair. It should be. You paid a fortune for it. I had to. My ass is glued to this thing more hours than I care to admit. I agreed with a nod. Anyway, the house has to be sold first, so I don't want to get ahead of myself. I did tell Amber she could move in for now, but only herself and her clothes. The bedroom's set, and the rest of her junk has to stay at Mom's until I buy a condo. That will give her time to get rid of some of the stuff she doesn't need. I went downstairs to talk to Billy and Todd in the tech department before I headed home. Billy had just hung up from a call with the tech guys at the police station downtown. They were discussing a tape they'd both reviewed, and they'd come to the same conclusion. It led nowhere. Originally, they thought somebody could have been following Elise, but after looking at another tape from farther down the block, they saw the vehicle in question pull into a gas station. So far, according to Todd, nothing looked promising. I stopped at Chin's Chinese restaurant on my way home and picked up dinner. Chin's had the best takeout food in town. I figured I owed Amber some extra FaceTime. We'd have more quality time to discuss the condos and look at the listing sheets if I wasn't slaving over a hot stove. I was never the best cook anyway, and cooking wasn't one of my favorite pastimes, so Chinese would do it for dinner. I knew Amber would talk my head off, describing the condos she'd viewed. She was probably more excited than I was, since she had never lived anywhere other than with Mom. I checked the time as I set the table, 4:45. She should arrive any minute. I set out a small plate and put both fortune cookies on it. She could take her pick of the fun treat after dinner. We'd both read our fortunes out loud. A heads-up knock sounded 10 minutes later, then Amber let herself in. "I'm here, and I'm bearing gifts." I peeked around the corner from the dinette into the foyer where she sat on the bench removing her shoes. It was nice that I didn't have to remind her. I was sure Amber would be a great roommate. She was neat and respectful. "I bought Chinese." "Oh, yum. I hope you got chicken almond ding, pot stickers, and fried rice." "Is there anything else?" I smiled. "Yeah, I brought 2 bottles of wine, one for you and one for me. We can hang out, talk trash, and get tipsy." "Sounds good. Let's eat." By 5:30, the table had been cleared and the dishwasher loaded with the few plates we'd used. We sat on the sofa and got comfortable, each with a glass of wine, as we looked over the condo listings. The plate with the fortune cookies sat on the coffee table in front of us. "Can I pick which fortune cookie I want?" "Sure, go ahead. You have to read it out loud, though." "Okay, here goes." Amber tore the cellophane wrapper open with her teeth and pulled out the cookie. She cracked it in half and slid out the small white strip of paper. She cleared her throat. "Okay, here goes. It says, 'A secret admirer will soon be revealed.'" "Wow, mysterious, huh?" Amber laughed. "There is Sean from school. I think he's had a thing for me for a while. Okay, now it's your turn." I cracked open my cookie and stared at the message. "You have to read it out loud. It's the rules." "It's just a stupid saying." Amber pulled the note from my fingers. "I'll read it. 'A stranger will present you with a gift.' That's a nice fortune. I like yours better." "Well, whatever. You can have my cookie, too. Let's plan next weekend to view a few more three-bedroom condos. And I want to take a look at the ones you liked already. I have to get Melissa to list the house right away, too." "Jade, I'm really excited about moving in with you. I promise you won't regret it. Mom is already talking about making my old bedroom into a craft room. That means there's no turning back." I squeezed her hand. "I know, hun, and I won't change my mind. We're in this together, and here's your own set of keys." I laughed. "These are Lance's old ones. He definitely has no need for them anymore." Chapter 18. Dime relived the encounter he'd had with Melissa Maitely yesterday. He sat at the table, enjoying his Monday morning breakfast with a sly grin on his face, suckering the ditzy bleached blonde into believing anything he said was as easy as taking candy from a baby. He had entered Realty World around 11:45 and saw her sitting at her desk. The bell above the glass door clinked when he passed through. She looked up and smiled. He checked the parking lot before he walked in. Only one car sat outside, and he assumed it belonged to her. "Good morning," she chuckled when she looked at the clock. "Oops, I guess it's almost noon. Hi, I'm Melissa Maitely." She stood to shake his hand. "Hi, I'm David Ingalls. Is that your car outside? I love that model. I was actually looking at the new Infiniti sedan myself." "Yes, I just bought it a few months ago. I'll admit I love that car. And gold, well," she laughed, "it's the color of success." He looked her over slowly. "It sure is." "Well, Mr. Ingalls, is there something I can help you with?" She glanced at the clock again. "Actually, I'm waiting for a client to arrive. I'll be locking up in a few minutes." "No problem. Just checking out the realtors in the area to see who really wants my business. You see, I'm new in town and was hoping to tour some of the more upscale private properties you have listed, like the one on Oriole Lane. But if you're too busy..." She hushed away his comment. "I'd love to work as your realtor, Mr. Ingalls. Oriole Lane is quite the property. I'd be happy to show you that home and any others in that general price range if you like. Maybe later this afternoon?" "How about giving me your card, and I'll think about it. I'm not sure if later would work for me. How does your schedule look during the week?" "Let me take a peek here and see." Dime listened as she mumbled to herself while clicking through her computer's calendar. I guess I didn't realize how busy I was, clear through the weekend. I have an all-day showing for condos on Saturday. I could probably fit you in after my last appointment on Tuesday. That's at 5 o'clock. He deliberately paced as if he were losing interest. "Maybe." "It's no problem, really. I aim to keep my clients happy." She smiled and waited for him to make eye contact with her, but he didn't. He stared at her business card as if he had to think about it. "I'll get back to you if it works for me. Thanks." Dime headed for the door. "Are you sure? I'd love to show you our executive properties at your convenience if Tuesday doesn't work. Please call me if you change your mind." The bell above Realty World's glass door clinked, and he was gone. He laughed at the memory from yesterday and looked at his watch. 8 a.m. Dime wiped his mouth with a paper napkin, balled it up, and tossed it into the stainless steel trash can next to the stove. His plate and cup went into the sink, and he left the house. He thought of the right approach to connect with Melissa tomorrow evening while he drove. He didn't want his fake name or the property she was going to show him to come up on her appointment calendar. He would wait and call her at the last minute, probably around 5:30. He'd make sure to remind her that if she couldn't accommodate his needs, he would work with a different realtor. He knew she didn't get to the position of being a top earner by slacking off. Dime was sure she would agree to show him the property on Oriole Lane. He pulled into the lot and parked his Jeep. As long as she was on his mind, he went ahead and set the alarm on his watch for 5:30 tomorrow afternoon. Melissa Maitely would get a phone call. Her ambition, or lack of it, would determine her fate. The voices came to life and told him to make a quick call to the florist before going inside. He obeyed. Chapter 19. A mixed floral arrangement was delivered to the sheriff's department by a driver from Lily's Garden at 9 o'clock. The delivery man told Jan at the reception counter that the flowers were for Jade Monroe. Jan signed for them. The arrangement was huge, colorful, and filled with purple and yellow lilies, tulips, carnations, baby's breath, and roses. Jan sniffed the flowers before buzzing herself through to the bullpen. "I'm jealous," she said as she entered the room. "Sure wish someone would send me flowers once in a blue moon." "Check that out," Jack said. He whistled as he watched Jan to see where she was taking the vase. I looked up from my computer when Jan zeroed in and locked eyes with me. "These are for you, Jade." "From who?" I cleared a space on my desk for the beautiful, expensive-looking vase of flowers. "No clue, and there wasn't any card. The driver just said they were for you, and here they are. I wish I had a secret admirer that would send me flowers." My mind flashed back for a second to the fortune cookie note. I shook it off. I didn't believe in that nonsense. "What florist delivered it?" "Lily's Garden. Anyway, I'm jealous." "Me too," Jack joked. "Knock it off. I'll get to the bottom of this. I'll call the florist and find out who bought them. Somebody had to pay the bill." "Thanks, Jan." "Yep, no problem." Jan exited the bullpen while I stared at the flowers. They were beautiful. "So, what do you think it means? Your birthday isn't for another week. Your house hasn't sold yet. Lance hasn't reconsidered, has he?" "Heck no. I am impressed, though." "Really? About what?" "You. You're a guy. Guys don't remember birthdays." "Ouch. My name isn't Lance." "Thank God." I breathed a sigh of relief. Now I know who they're from. I smiled widely. "Who?" "Amber. Who else would do something so sweet?" I chuckled and remembered that she'd read my fortune cookie, too. "I'm letting her move in, and she looked at condos for me yesterday. We went over the listings last night at my place while we had a Chinese dinner together." "And you didn't think to invite me? Damn it, girl, I sat alone watching a Lifetime movie and with a TV dinner on my lap." I chuckled. "You know, I don't believe a word you said. Anyway, it was our overdue girls' night." I looked at the clock. Amber was in class. I couldn't call right now, so I texted her instead. "Thanks for the flowers, sis. They're beautiful, and you're a sweetheart." My mind drifted back to Elise. The autopsy would be complete soon.
Relax your shoulders, take a deep breath, and enjoy this moment of musical stillness with us. And thank you for watching this audiobook video.
and Perry could finally ID her. I was certain Doug had started it. "Can you do me a favor, partner?" "Sure, name it." "I'll make a fresh pot of coffee if you go downstairs and check on Doug's progress. I'd like to call Perry and tell him when he can come in. Ask Jason if he set up the time for the transport company to pick up Morris's body, too. I want to call Terrence and let him know." "Yep, on it. Get that coffee started." I poured water into the pot and lined the basket with a paper filter. I knew we'd go through an entire pot, so I made 12 cups, scooping 6 heaping tablespoons of Colombian roast into the basket. I hit the start button and knocked on Lieutenant Clark's door. He glanced up through the window and waved me in. "Jade, what can I do for you?" "We're stuck, boss. None of the names from Morris's list of associates cross-referenced with Elise's names. Plus, we know Perry isn't good for this crime." He ran his palms over his eyes and exhaled a groan. "Yeah, I know. I'll admit I haven't slept much this last week." He rubbed the belly that his starched shirt was stretched across and leaned back in his chair. I nodded. "I just don't know where to go with this. Even with a profile on this killer, we still have nothing. He's a ghost. The media can't help us. We already know who our victims are. Plastering their photos across the TV screen isn't going to do anything except agonize Perry even more. We can't even put together a composite of the killer for the media. No eyewitnesses." "Have all of the people in Elise's yoga class from Friday night been interviewed?" "Yep, they all left before she did, and she never mentioned plans other than going home after the class." "So that's a dead end, too. And her car? Did the guys get anywhere with the seat being pushed back? Any trace?" "Nothing. The perp must be gloved at all times. We're not doing our victims justice." I smacked the doorframe with my open hand and walked out, irritated. Jack entered the bullpen just as I got back to my desk. "Doug has about an hour left with Elise. Jason said the transport company is on their way." "Good, I'll call Terrence and give him a heads up." Jack sat down and rapped his knuckles on the desk. "I'd tell Perry to come at noon to be on the safe side. Of course, the autopsy is just for protocol, right? Elise was a healthy, fit woman, wasn't she?" "Yeah. The only thing off might be the toxicology report if she was slipped a drug. Highly unlikely, though. We saw the timestamp on the video of her leaving right after class, and it didn't sound like she intended to stop anywhere. Anyway, the tox report should be back in a few days. I know Doug is busy right now, but Clark wants the rest of us in the lunchroom to touch base on everything we've done so far. I'll call Perry first and tell him to be here at noon." I picked up my desk phone and made 2 calls. The first was to tell Perry to come in at noon for Elise's official ID, and the other call was to Terrence. Morris's body would arrive at Philip's funeral home in a few hours. Terrence said he would let me know what day the funeral would be scheduled for. Jack and I planned to attend. We went through everything again with the lieutenant. This time, our group included Kyle, Dan, Todd, and Bill. We had several officers from North Bend PD, John and Lucas from their tech department, and Detective Miller on speakerphone with us. Over the course of an hour, and with each person sharing their bit of information, we still came up blank. We agreed it would take a miracle and a lot of luck to catch this killer. Perry was a mess, and it was difficult dealing with him when he came into ID Elise, but it had to be done. He was an emotional wreck, and I could feel his pain. He asked if I would accompany him to the viewing window, and I agreed. I didn't think he was strong enough to handle seeing her alone. He seemed as though he was ready to collapse any second. Perry squeezed my hand tightly when Jason opened the blinds and rolled the gurney to the window. He lowered the white sheet covering Elise's face. Perry's entire body shook as he sobbed and nodded. I motioned for Jason to close the blinds. The visitors' lounge was a peaceful shade of biscuit, and peach-colored blinds covered the windows facing south. 2 couches and 2 side chairs lined the walls, and a few magazines and a Bible were spread across the coffee table. Soft music played so quietly it was barely audible. I sat there with Perry, feeling awful for him, and stayed until he was composed enough to drive home. Just watching Perry made me wonder how Terrence was dealing with Morris's death, so I called him back and talked for a bit, just person to person. Even though it didn't seem as though Terrence and Morris were as close as they could have been, I knew the man was grieving nonetheless. I offered my condolences again and told him Jack and I would be at the funeral on Friday. I busied myself with monotonous paperwork for the rest of the day. I didn't have anything else to work on, and I felt hopeless. "Jack, I'm heading out unless you need help with anything." "Nah, go ahead. I'm right behind you. Unless new leads come in, we're at a standstill anyway. Let's see what the lieutenant thinks about releasing Elise's body soon. I'm sure Perry wants to give his wife a decent burial." I noticed the flashing light on my phone just as I was ready to drop it into my purse. A text had come in hours earlier from Amber. "Don't know what you're talking about, sis. No flowers for me. Sorry I didn't think of it. Remember the fortune cookie? Sounds like you're getting some good karma." I seriously had my doubts. Chapter 20. His load was beginning to lighten. "It's time to get this party started again. As usual, I've gone unnoticed. I think it's the perfect day for Melissa and me to get better acquainted." Dime had checked out the weather forecast for the entire week. A slow-moving warm front was coming in from the southwest. It ensured dry weather and plenty of sunshine going into next weekend. No tire tread marks or footprints would be found at the home on Oriole Lane. He headed out in his Jeep and drove east on Decorah Road, a 2-lane state highway that would take him away from North Bend. He could have set up the appointment with Melissa any time during the week, but he knew she had a 5 o'clock appointment, and he wanted to catch her off guard. He headed in the general direction of the home for sale on Oriole Lane and checked the time, even though the alarm was set on his phone. A small bar with a worn-out facade came into view on the south side of the highway. 2 cars sat in the gravel parking lot facing the front door of Eddie's Tap. Dime assumed one of the cars belonged to the bartender. "What's the harm? I still have a half hour before I need to call Melissa." He clicked the right turn blinker and slowed down. The Jeep's oversized tires kicked up gravel from the unpaved parking lot as he pulled in and parked. Dime exited his vehicle and walked the 10 steps to the front door. He reached back and pulled up the hood on his black sweatshirt and put on the dark green aviator glasses he kept in his pocket. The old saloon-style swinging doors squeaked when he pushed through them. The bar had a strange Western and biker bar theme going on. Motorcycle forks and handlebars were bolted to old barn beam support pillars as wall art, and the bar stools were saddles on posts. The bartender wore a black leather vest and a cowboy hat. He waxed the ends of his mustache so the tips curled up and held their twisted, thin shape. The walls were lined with Harley posters of nearly naked women posed provocatively on motorcycles. Dime grumbled as he took a seat, careful to avoid the saddle horn between his legs. He shrugged and cracked his neck from side to side. Having to get the bartender's attention annoyed him since the place was nearly empty. He called out, "I'll have a Stella Artois." Mr. Mustache walked over. "What? Never heard of that before. Is that some kind of fancy-ass beer?" "Fine. How about a Guinness?" The bartender stared at him. "I'll have a Bud Light." "That I can do, pal. Can or bottle?" "Can, and pour it into a glass." Dime sat at the bar, mindlessly watching the evening news on TV. An old-timer sat alone near the door, plugging quarters into a video poker machine. Dime took a gulp of beer and continued staring at the screen. He still had time to kill. He chuckled at the thought, clever man that he was. The world news segment had just ended and the local news had begun. A mention of the 2 recent murders in the North Bend area perked him up. The old-timer stopped playing video poker momentarily and turned to watch the news report. According to the anchorman, there were no suspects in custody and the sheriff's department had no leads. It was a mystery to everyone in this normally safe, family-oriented community, and people were fearful. Parents were advised to watch their children closely and to keep their doors locked even during the day. The anchorman reminded TV viewers that if anyone had information that could help the North Bend Sheriff's Department or local police department apprehend this killer, they could call the number at the bottom of the screen and remain anonymous. Dime laughed, muttered something, and then laughed again. The bartender gave him a scowl. "Man, why is that so funny to you? Some sick SOB is out there killing people." Dime slid off the saddle stool, tossed a 5 on the bar, and walked out. The alarm on his watch sounded just as he climbed into his Jeep. He grinned and pulled out his burner phone to call Melissa. It rang 4 times before she finally answered. "Hello, Realty World, Melissa Matley speaking. One moment, please." Melissa apparently had another caller she found more important, which made Dime mad. He was tired of women like her treating him with no respect. Dime heard the phone click back over to him several minutes later. "I'm so sorry to keep you waiting. This is Melissa again. How may I improve your day?" His anger subsided momentarily. "Hello, Melissa. David Ingalls here. Remember me from Sunday?" "Of course I do, and I'm delighted you called." "Me too." "So have you decided to take a look at Oriole Lane after all?" "I certainly have. How about right now?" Silence filled her end of the phone line. "Hello?" "Sorry, I had to think for a second. I just finished my last showing and was headed back to the office. I have to write up a listing description for a client that wants to sell her home. I hadn't heard from you, so I made other plans. Can we schedule it for tomorrow instead? I'd kind of like to get this listing done tonight." Never mind. I have to go back to Philly tomorrow for a while. Maybe I'll check out some other realtors when I come back to North Bend. Thanks anyway." "No, wait. I guess I can turn around. I don't want you to leave town unhappy with my professional services. I aim to please. I'll meet you at the residence if you don't mind doing it that way. How about 6:15? Melissa's voice began to cut in and out. "Hello? Mr. Ingalls? My battery is going. Did you hear me?" "Yes, I said 6:15 is perfect. See you soon. I'm looking forward to it." I can't believe some women are that naive dealing with strangers. First, Elise opens her window on a dark, deserted road, and now Melissa is going to meet me by herself at a remote home for sale. Anyone that stupid deserves to die. And then there was Morris. Dime pulled away from Eddie's tap. Gravel crunched under his tires until he hit the blacktop of the highway and headed east. From the bar, the drive would take 10 more minutes. He had a bit of an advantage being able to arrive before Melissa did. He'd take a few minutes to scope out the surroundings. From the aerial view on the listing, the driveway looked long and private with a heavy pine forest leading in. Nobody would see their vehicles from the road. With the house vacant, he'd have plenty of quality time alone with the foolish realtor. Dime hit his left blinker and turned off the highway onto Oriole Lane. His head swiveled left and right as he drove slowly. The secluded street was perfect for his needs. He passed only one house a half-mile back, and who knew what lay ahead? He didn't see any other homes nearby when he slowed at the driveway with the for sale sign hammered into the ground next to the road. The sign displayed the Realty World logo, her contact info, and Melissa's smiling face. "You won't be smiling for long." The voices in Dime's head smirked as they encouraged him to turn in, and he did. The paved driveway made enough of an S-curve to obstruct the view of the house. Beds of multicolored flowers and shrubbery flanked the sides of the driveway, telling Dime that groundskeepers were retained to keep appearances up while the house stood vacant. He parked, got out, took off his sweatshirt, and left it in the Jeep. He looked back toward the driveway to make sure he couldn't see the road. "Nice digs," he said as he took in the front of the house. Before him stood an enormous, sprawling arts and crafts-style 2-story home. The covered porch filled the length of the house and was large and inviting. 2 flagstone columns stood on either side of the matching flagstone steps leading up to the porch. Every window on the front of the home was accented with leaded glass, including the arched window over the thick oak double doors. The home's clapboard siding was painted a soft celery green, and the accent trim around the windows was a pale yellow. Each door of the 5-car garage had arched windows on the oak doors, matching the house's front door. More flower beds lined the flagstone walkway that led from the driveway to the porch steps. A smile lit his face, and he whistled at the sight before him, then headed down the path to check the outbuildings. The one to the right could be the perfect place for Melissa to meet her maker. The latex gloves jammed in his pocket were ready when he needed them. He put them on temporarily to push open the double doors of what looked to be a horse barn. 6 gated stalls stood on either side of a wide center walkway. Remnants of scattered straw still covered the floor. When he walked in, he saw harnesses and bridles that had been left behind hanging in the tack room. He reached out and touched the old, worn leather and steel accessories. These will come in handy. A noise sounded behind him. He turned and slipped off the gloves when he saw Melissa entering through the creaky barn doors. The evening sun hung lower in the sky and pierced the opening as she walked through. He could only see her as a silhouette walking toward him. "Hello, David. I see you've begun without me." He held out his hand and shook hers. "Good to see you, Melissa, and thanks for adjusting your schedule to accommodate my short notice. What a great property. Shall we check out the house first?" "Well, as long as we're out here anyway." "Humor me, please. I'd rather end our tour outside. I'm anxious to see the house." "Oh, okay then. Right this way." Melissa entered the code on the lockbox attached to the heavy wooden front doors. She opened the box and removed the key, then slid the key into the deadbolt and turned it to the right. The lock clicked, and they entered the enormous foyer. Dime had no interest in touring the house, but he didn't want to create suspicion on her end. He'd play the game for a while until the voices gave him the command. A blind side at the end of the tour would be worth waiting for. "So, Mr. Ingalls, why a house this large? Do you have a family?" Melissa carried several listing sheets as they walked. "Oh, I guess we didn't discuss much on Sunday, did we? If I remember correctly, you were heading out." She apologized. "That's right, but late spring into summer is our busiest season. So, the family?" "Yes, they're in Philly. They'll arrive once I pick out a home. My children are still in school for a few more weeks. They told me they want horses, hence this type of property." "That's wonderful. How many kids do you have?" 2, a boy and a girl." "And the missus, does she like to cook? The kitchen is to die for." Dime chuckled under his breath. Melissa smiled at him. "Let me show you what I mean. Right this way." Dime followed her through the large foyer. Saltillo tiles glistened on the floor. Down the oak-paneled hallway, heading toward the back of the house, was the living room with floor-to-ceiling windows. Heavy, rough-hewn beams accented the cathedral ceiling. The living room faced the back pasture where his non-existent horses would graze. The kitchen was to their right, beyond the butler's pantry and dining room. He whistled, playing it up for all it was worth. "Nice kitchen. Anna's going to love it." "I bet she will. The center island's butcher block top is 3-inch thick oak." She glanced down at the listing sheet and read off the brand names. "The stove is Wolf, and the refrigerator is Sub-Zero. I'm sure your wife will appreciate those high-quality appliances. The subway tile backsplash is a recent addition. Everyone seems to love subway tiles these days." "Uh-huh. Let's check out the bedrooms." "Of course. They're all on the second floor. Right this way." Melissa led Dime through several more tiled hallways before they reached the staircase, which was just off the family room. She stopped for a few seconds to let him appreciate the enormous stacked stone fireplace whose facade reached the ceiling. Here's an interesting fact. The listing says that mantle, she pointed to it, was hewn from an oak tree that grew right on this property. Dime glanced at the mantle, then followed the stonework to the ceiling with his eyes. It's amazing. The house tour took another 30 minutes. 4 large bedrooms were upstairs besides the master suite. Each bedroom had its own private bath with windows facing the front or back of the property. This home is wonderful. I'm sure my family will be more than happy to live here. Dime noticed the twinkle in her eye and the grin that spread across her face when he made that comment. All she cares about is making a sale. It's only about the commission. They're all the same. You're nobody to her. Kill the bitch and get it over with. Dime rubbed his temples. The time was near, and the voices were calling the shots. Are you okay? You just grimaced like a headache was coming on, Melissa said. What? Oh, sorry. I'm fine. I get seasonal allergy headaches now and then. Shall we move on to the garage and the outbuildings? He asked. He reached into his front pocket and felt for the gloves. Sure, right this way. She led Dime back downstairs and through the mudroom into the 5-car garage. This is the ultimate garage. It's perfect for 3 cars, a few toys and bicycles, and it's heated. That's a plus. So we have the horse barn and the other building. What was that one used for? I believe it's a tractor shed. There's a 10-acre pasture, you know. Of course. Let's spend some time in the horse barn. I had just walked in when you arrived earlier. My kids will be excited to hear more about it. Melissa read the outbuilding descriptions from the listing sheet. Apparently there are 12 stalls in total. Have you ever owned horses? As she talked, she entered through the double barn doors for the 2nd time. Not yet. Well, it's an ambitious enterprise, I'm sure. I hate to say it, but this beautiful residence has been for sale for 8 months, and you're only the 2nd person I've shown it to. I imagine it's out of most people's price range. Dime smiled as he reached into his pocket and slipped on the gloves while he followed behind her. That's what I'm counting on. Melissa continued walking. I guess this is the tack room, whatever that means. She giggled coquettishly as she entered the area. I'll admit, I don't know a thing about horses. Or about taking safety measures when you're alone with a stranger. I'm sorry, what? She turned toward him and stared. Terror spread across her face as she acknowledged the predicament in which she found herself. Her eyes darted left and right for a way to escape. He blocked the only exit from the room with his large body. She didn't have time to duck before he swung a bridle that caught her in the face. She stumbled backward and hit the rough wooden wall. He swung the bridle again and again, connecting with her face each time until she was unconscious. Blood ran down her forehead and dripped off her chin, soaking her white blouse. He smirked and cocked his head while he stared at her. You aren't that hot anymore, are you? He gathered the gear he needed. That was so easy. I love blind sides. If only I had a picture of their faces at the moment of realization. Dime wadded up the 2 listing sheets and grabbed the bridle and a length of leather strap. This should do it. Oh yeah, I can't forget the dime. He started with the prep work by opening the small bottle of hand sanitizer he kept in his other front pocket. He poured some in her hands and rubbed them together. He'd shaken her hand earlier and didn't want to take any chances. He was careful not to touch anything in the house while his hands were ungloved. Her car keys were in her blazer pocket. He pulled them out. The balled-up listing sheets were jammed deep down her throat. He cleaned the dime with the hand sanitizer and placed it under her tongue while humming a little ditty that was stuck in his head. He closed her mouth and pinched her nose. Her body jerked involuntarily while it was being starved of oxygen. Dime glanced at his watch and held his position another 3 minutes before releasing her and checking for a pulse. There wasn't any. He placed the bridle in her mouth, wrapped the leather strap around her neck, and carried her to a stall. With the strap, he secured her in a sitting position to the stall gate from the inside. It would be more difficult to see her that way. He wanted the cops to earn their living, and he wasn't going to make finding her too easy on them. He walked to the 5th stall on the left and opened the bag he had placed there earlier. A clean change of clothes and another pair of latex gloves were inside. He rolled up the bloody gloves and removed the clothing he had on, then tossed them into the bag. After putting on the clean pair of gloves, he flipped the toggle switch for the barn lights and pulled the doors closed. Back inside the house, he walked through to the garage and hit the button to open one of the overhead doors. He drove her car in, then opened the briefcase that sat on the passenger seat. Inside were her purse, cell phone, and a calendar listing all of her appointments for the month. He pulled the battery out of her phone and threw it back in, then closed the briefcase. He grabbed it by the leather handle. It would go along with him. Dime got out, adjusted the seat back to the position Melissa had had it in, and closed the car door. He wouldn't make that mistake twice. A scan across the garage told him it looked fine. He lowered the overhead door and entered the house. A slow, methodical walk from room to room would guarantee him the house looked the way it did when they entered. He turned off the lights and exited out the front. He put the key back into the lockbox and clicked it closed. Dime checked the time. 7:30. He climbed into his Jeep and drove away. The voices in his head laughed with him as he headed toward home. He wondered how to keep Melissa's co-workers from missing her. He wasn't quite ready for her to be found yet. He'd have to think about that, maybe while lounging in the basement enjoying a beer. A thought popped into his mind as he passed North Bend. He pulled over and turned around. I'll text one of her co-workers from her phone and make something up. I have to do it at Realty World's office, though. Dime headed in that direction. It was nearly 8 o'clock now. He drove by the office slowly, making sure the lights were off and the parking lot was empty. He pulled in behind the building, parked, and retrieved her cell phone and battery from the briefcase. With his own phone, he pulled up Realty World's website and clicked on the list of agents. Each name popped up on the screen. He put the battery back in her phone, turned it on, and noticed it was almost dead. He'd only need a minute. A quick look around confirmed he was still alone. There were no headlights approaching or people walking the area. Dime scrolled through her contact list and found a name that would do just fine. Adriana Cruz. She was another top earner at their agency. He pressed the yellow envelope icon and tapped out a short text. Adriana, I had to leave town abruptly. Family emergency. I may be gone for a few days. I'll be in touch. Thanks. Dime smiled. He knew if it got that far and the cops pinged her phone, the last message would show it came right from Realty World's own parking lot. Sounds legit to me. He removed the battery again and drove home. Chapter 21. I changed the birds' water and filled up the seed bowl as I talked on the phone. Multitasking seemed necessary every time I spoke to my mom. She was the only person I knew that could talk on the phone for 2 hours at a time. My Bluetooth was a godsend. Yes, I'm sure, Mom. Amber isn't going to be an inconvenience. Actually, now that I've given it some thought, I'm looking forward to having her as a roommate. She's a breath of fresh air. You know she's moving because of Bruce, don't you? Maybe you should talk to your husband about keeping his distance until she's out of the house. Bruce is strange and you know it. Jade, please don't start with me. I'm doing my best to keep the peace. I filled my wine glass and set it down, then clicked the remote and turned on the TV. I muted the sound. Whatever. Amber is moving in this weekend, but her junk is staying there until I'm out of the house. She said you wanted to make her bedroom into a craft room? Yes, I've taken up scrapbooking and knitting. Cool. Anyway, we're going to check out a few more condos on Saturday. I'm definitely ready for a mental health break. Maybe looking at a few potential places to live will be a fun distraction. Do you want to talk about it, honey? Sorry, Mom. It's work-related. Read the paper, you'll get some idea of what I've been doing lately. Right now, I just want to veg out and drink my wine. You know, your birthday is Saturday. Let's all go out to dinner after you girls look at the condos and Amber moves her things in. Okay, I can do that as long as no shit hits the fan before Saturday night. You make the plans and Amber and I will meet you wherever you decide. Promise me you'll work on your cursing, honey. Sure thing, Mom. Good night. I looked through my closet for something appropriate to wear to Morris King's funeral. Terrence told me during a phone call earlier that the funeral was scheduled for Friday at 11 a.m. with a luncheon to follow. As far as I knew, Detective Lindstrom and Lieutenant Colgate would be there too. I slid the wooden hangers from right to left along the pole and found a navy blue pantsuit that would work fine. A floral scarf wrapped around the collar of a simple white blouse would accent it nicely. My thoughts returned to what had been on my mind before the phone call from my mom. I knew the flowers I received yesterday hadn't come from Amber. The florist said she couldn't remember what the person looked like that bought them, but they paid in cash. According to her, it had been a hectic day with a huge wedding flower order. I didn't pursue it. Lance always told me I was good at that, avoidance. I was a great cop, according to him, but even better at avoiding life issues, like the lack of communication between us. The only issue I was aware of was that my husband was having an affair with another salesperson at the Toyota dealership where he worked. I was pretty sure he didn't want to communicate with me about that. Fast forward 10 months, she was in and I was out. I'd been replaced, and life went on. After the 10 o'clock news, I went to bed, hoping for a decent night's sleep, but not expecting it. The alarm sounded at 6 a.m. I was awake anyway and waiting for its loud beep to go off. I got up, stumbled to the window, and turned the wand on the blinds. The sun poured in. It felt good. I started the coffee pot, said good morning to Polly and Porky, fed them, and hit the shower. I appreciated the fact that my hair was normally my friend. If the weather was dry and the humidity was low, my thick, straight hair behaved with very little effort on my part. A quick comb-through, a touch of mascara, and a little blush were all I needed to look presentable on most workdays. I ate a piece of toast with raspberry preserves, drank a cup of coffee, filled my travel mug, and headed to the station. Within minutes, I had arrived. "Morning, Jade." I looked up from my desk and nodded. "Billings?" "You're in early. Need help with anything?" Billings plunked down in one of my guest chairs and set his cup on a sheet of paper. He looked at his watch. "It's 7 o'clock. "Yeah, I know, but I couldn't sleep anymore. Thought I'd clean up my desk and file away some of these closed cases from last month. We also have a few criminals being transferred to Waupun today. I want to talk to them before they leave our jurisdiction. Maybe they'll do a little singing before their lives get a whole lot worse." I took a sip from my travel mug. Once Jack gets in, I want to pay a visit to some of our local informants, too. There has to be word on the street about our murder cases. Somebody has to know something. We've got to get out and pound the pavement. Sitting here doing busy work will drive me nuts. "I hear you, Sergeant. Just say the word. Clayton and I will pitch in wherever you need us. The more sets of eyes, the better. We can go through all of the interview logs again, hit the streets, go back out to the crime scenes, and scour the areas one more time. Whatever you need." "Thanks, Billings. I'll let you know." Jack walked in at 8 o'clock alongside the lieutenant. They parted ways at the bullpen. Jack to his desk, the lieutenant to his office. "Well, partner, what's on the agenda for today?" "We should hit the streets, see if there's any new chatter. The local lowlife should have heard something by now." "You'd think. I'm up for it. Anything else?" Jack filled 2 coffee cups from the fresh pot Billings made when he got there. "Thanks. Yeah, I've got to go upstairs and talk to a few of our guests before they leave our 5-star accommodations." I smiled. Jack laughed. "You mean the local pharmacists?" The very ones. They're being transferred to Waupun today. Guess their attorneys couldn't get the charges reduced. They're each looking at substantial time for intent to sell, not just possession. More than 3 grams each? That's right. Sia wouldn't want to be ya. I thought they might want to make a final goodwill gesture before they leave town. Maybe I can set them up with nicer roommates or something if they give me a few names. Okay. Well, whenever you want to hit the streets, let me know. Hand me those folders, I'll file them away. Thanks, I appreciate it. Billings, call a florist in Milwaukee and order an arrangement to be delivered to Phillips Funeral Home for Morris King's funeral on Friday. Got it, boss. I checked the time, 8:30. Billings, hold down the fort. I'm going upstairs. I signed in at the reception counter and took the stairs to our jail. Hey, John, I'd like to have a chat with Manny Gomez and Frank Luis before they head out. I'll only need 30 minutes of their time. You got it, Sergeant Monroe. Would you like them linked up? Yeah, if you don't mind. Give me 10 minutes. No problem. I see one of my favorite magazines. I took a seat and waited. John returned a few minutes later and told me the inmates were ready for me. I nodded and walked into the cafeteria. At this time of day, nobody had visitors, and meals weren't being served. The 2 men sat at the table nearest the door. A deputy watched through the window separating the cafeteria from the guard station. "Gentlemen," I said as I sat down across from them, "I hear you're moving into the big house today. It must be an exciting time for both of you. Something different, right? New faces, new friends, new enemies." I looked at their sheets in front of me. You're both getting 10 years? That sucks. Guess your state-appointed attorney doesn't care much for meth pushers. "What do you want, lady? We got packing to do," Manny said, spewing the words at me. I laughed. Cute. Everything you need for the next 10 years will be provided for you by us, the taxpayers. As far as I know, a couple of orange jumpsuits and a pair of rubber sandals should do it. I gave them both the once-over. Pink looks more like your color, though. Anyway, I might be able to help you out with your accommodations. You know, maybe a down feather pillow, something of that nature. I grinned at both of them and cocked my head to the right. They huffed. No? Not appealing enough? What would you boys think of bunking together? That in itself is like winning the lottery. You'll sleep better at night not worrying that your roommate has a shiv under his mattress, or worse. You could be bunked with a 300-pound guy named Bubba. All you have to do is give me some names. I want big names, not the punks you run with. I looked at the analog clock above the door. See the time? They both turned around and looked at the wall. Man, I'd hate to be you right now. Your lives are going to change substantially in a few short hours. It's 9 o'clock, and your transport bus leaves at noon. If I don't hear anything from you by 11, the offer is off the table. Have a nice life, boys. I got up and walked out. A thought popped into my head as I took the stairs down to the bullpen. Jack, Clayton, Billings, come with me. They looked up from their desks, pushed their chairs back, and followed. I rapped on the lieutenant's door. He waved us in. "What's with the expression, Jade? You look like you just had an epiphany." The lieutenant set his paperwork down and gave me the floor. I might have. What if we're looking at this murderer the wrong way? Jack spoke up. Meaning? Maybe the name Dime doesn't have anything to do with drugs. What if his nickname means he did a 10-year stint in prison? You could be onto something, but even that would be tough to track down. We don't have a real name, age, or description, Clayton said. True, but it gives us a little more to work with. We could start with state correctional institutions and the inmates that serve 10-year sentences. Maybe even the guards would know if someone had that nickname. We could ask on the street, too. We have to do something, Lieutenant. Wishful thinking isn't going to catch this monster. You're right, Jade. Okay, divide up the 30 or so facilities in the state and get the list of all inmates that served 10 years and have been released within the last year. We have to start small. This task could eat up all of our time otherwise. Talk to people on the street. Tell the North Bend PD what we're doing. We don't want to step on any toes. I'll give you a few weeks to pursue this avenue and see if it goes anywhere. We'll reconvene before the end of the month and see what we have. If nothing shakes out, we'll try something else. Let's move. Nice work, Jade.